What's going on, everybody? What's up, and welcome back to another weekly live stream here on Suns Digest. I'm your host, Bruce Veliz, and unfortunately, this episode is going to be a rantier one and a lot different than the ones that we've had in the previous weeks. We looked at this Suns team over these last couple weeks in these weekly live streams, really addressing the team as a whole, going over their wins, their losses, looking back at their past week, and overall addressing the team as they were continuing to climb and try to make that push for the postseason and to get into that play-in. But as we all know, that dream and that hope has faded away with this Phoenix Suns squad as we see them fall short to the Oklahoma City Thunder last night and get eliminated from postseason play. The first time the Phoenix Suns have had this moment since the bubble in 2020, and the first time since obviously they had made the finals in 2021. This team has taken multiple steps since that 2021 season to try to get better in trades and making moves to bolster this roster around Devin Booker and has failed to do so, regardless if it's the coaching staff with the rotations, regardless if it's the front office putting the right players in the right place, or ultimately finding the right contracts and cohesiveness with the players on the court themselves to give wins, to give any sort of happiness for this Phoenix Suns team, as they ultimately have fallen short this season and have not met those expectations that fans have set so high for them. So in this live stream, we're going to do things a little bit different. We're going to look at this Suns team. We're going to go over any questions you guys have revolving around this Suns squad, but we're going to look at it as a whole, right? We're going to look at this season, looking back on it, kind of going over what happened in the beginning, what seemingly went wrong throughout the season, going over the positives, the negatives of this team, and then overall as a whole, kind of go over this squad in general, looking forward to the future, really addressing some questions. We're going to be having videos coming out on this channel on the daily, talking about numerous topics revolving around this Phoenix Suns team. We had one today talking about the future and uncertainty of Bradley Beal here staying in Phoenix, following a report from John Gambardaro, which lets us to believe that Bradley Beal will be out of Phoenix this season, regardless if it's via trade or via buyout. He will not be on this Phoenix Suns roster, and there'll be more news coming through, regardless around Kevin Durant stuff, Devin Booker stuff. Who else could be moved on this team? Could Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, potentially one of these rookies be thrown in a Bradley Beal trade to get it done? We'll be coming and getting you get all that news, talking about the front office, the head coach, all of those changes, and everything else revolving around this team. Even diving into some G League stuff as well, because the Valley Suns have done some fantastic stuff this season in their inaugural season, unlike the Phoenix Suns, their parent franchise. But like I mentioned, we'll be diving into all of that and getting into all of that in this stream and on this channel here. So I want to give you guys a huge shout out, everyone that has been in the stream, everyone that has shown their support over these last couple of weeks, because you guys have been absolutely fantastic. Like I said, always being in here and always, kind of getting the facts. We see so many supporters here in this channel, like my guys, Phoenix Suns #1 fan, King Nacho over here as well, saying, yo, what's up? Are the Suns cooked, or are the Suns cooked, or are they cooked? Well, Phoenix Suns #1 fan, they are cooked. That is definitely right. The Phoenix Suns are done. Bruce is here to give us the facts. That's exactly right, King Nacho. That's my goal here with this Phoenix Suns team, is to provide the facts and the facts only, ladies and gentlemen. And that's what we're providing here for you guys. Let me see if I can get the chat to pop up. It's not looking like it is, so give me 1 second. We'll try to fix that for you. And then if this doesn't work, then I don't know what it is. But let's see if that fixes it. Give me 1 second. Boom, there he is, King Nacho, up here on the screen. Bruce is here to give the facts. We got the comments working. We got everybody in here. Shout out to King Nacho. Shout out to Phoenix Suns #1 fan. I know you guys always hear. Hope Cambo's right, but I don't see how they get rid of Beal. Well, we'll get into that in a little bit, King Nacho. I have, some stuff to discuss revolving around Bradley Beal himself as the player within this Suns franchise, because I do think there are some teams maybe that Bradley Beal wouldn't necessarily want to go to, but teams that would be interested in taking a Bradley Beal contract, and we can explore some contracts and some trades later as well. Brad deserves so much better. I agree, Chris's channel. I do not want to say this is like a hatred on Bradley Beal. He just hasn't really fit in. He's not worth the $50 million contract and the no trade clause that he is given either as well, and That's clearly representative of how he's been able to be on the court as a player with his skill set fitting in with this team. But not only just that, also his availability with this Suns squad, as he has been a little bit of an injury-prone star since coming over to Phoenix. But overall, in my opinion, I do think that Bradley Beal is well worth the $15 to $20 million that he may get if he is bought out in free agency, and he could definitely impact a team and help a team, as a fourth or fifth star in their rotation as a quality piece. He just needs to be in a team where they have a lot of lengthy defenders and they have a lot of size, I believe, where he can be that secondary ball handler and that also additional scorer. A team that I think really would fit with that would be Atlanta, potentially even Washington. But yeah, we'll get into that a little bit later. Where is the Bulls' interest in Beal? I don't know if they have much interest in Beal. I really don't know. L. Brad got paid for being a loser. He's fine. I don't know. It's not really. You have to fault, obviously, Washington for this because Washington's the one that gave him the contract, and Washington ultimately gave him that contract because they didn't want to lose him in free agency for nothing. So it's the fault of the old Washington front office. That's who I have to blame for that. But let's dive in, and let's dive into this. Suns Fever 83, what's up? No worries. We're just diving in. We're getting into just all the content. Hope you're having a great afternoon over on in Phoenix. No worries, no apologies for being late. But we're about to get into all the jazz here revolving around this Suns team. So let's dive in and let's get into it. And if the uh, actual thing would load, then we could get into it. But here it is. Boom. There we go. And I will come back up in 3 seconds. There I am. Whoop. You see me. I'm right here. But like I mentioned, Phoenix Suns lost last night to the Oklahoma City Thunder. This was the game sealing, thing that really put the nail in the coffin for this Suns team. 35-45, ladies and gentlemen. If you had told me at the beginning of this season that the Phoenix Suns had gone 35-45, I would have thought that either A, Kevin Durant, or Devin Booker, or B, both of them had sustained a serious injury or a season-ending injury to result in a season like this. With the roster changes that we saw go through, with the additions of Tyus Jones, Mason Plumlee, Monte Morris to really help out this point guard room, adding some more help with the veteran center, and also making some key draft picks in Ryan Denton and Osa Iguodala, a lot of fans, including myself, felt that this Suns team was really going to take over and be better than what they were last season. 6th place and getting a first round sweep. But unfortunately, we got a laugh in our face as they got worse over the year, as we saw with this team. And you can fault, once again, the roster, the players, how they play, but it just was not great. The Suns are on that 8-game losing streak that we see them coming into, losing to the Thunder, Warriors, Knicks, Celtics, Bucks, Rockets, Timberwolves, and Celtics in 8 straight games after they went on a big win streak where they had won 4 straight, being the Raptors, Bulls, Cavs, and Bucks, and it really cemented themselves on a little bit of a comeback in this second half of the year. After these 4 wins, a lot of fans, including myself, thought the Suns were actually back. They were putting themselves in the play-in and might be even able to squeak into that 8 seed, potentially even into that 7 seed if things had gone their way. But unfortunately for the Phoenix Suns, they fell victim to themselves, dealing with injuries and running into some top-tier teams really screwed the path for them in their quest of making the playoffs, as once again they lost 8 straight, in which Devin Booker tried his best, but with Kevin Durant getting injured versus the Houston Rockets and not having a secondary running mate as a scoring option, the Phoenix Suns saw blowouts basically in every single game, losing 10 to the Bucks by double digits. Celtics, 20 points, double-digit loss. Knicks, 14-point loss, a double-digit loss. The Warriors and the Thunder, once again, getting embarrassed. The Thunder almost had a 30-point lead on the Phoenix Suns, absolutely demolishing in that second and third quarter, and really, really putting it out there for the Suns fans at home with their lives on the line, putting out an utter display of disgraceful basketball to really, really watch. And that's been the main sentiment as well with this Phoenix Suns team. It's just been disgraceful basketball this season, as we have seen them flounder throughout the year in 2025. And like I mentioned, this is not good for Phoenix. I'm going to go to Twitter as well so we can get some stuff pulled up on this Phoenix Suns team, because I do believe that there is a lot to talk about with this Phoenix Suns organization and a lot really to dive into and discuss about them as well and where they really have fallen and failed. And I have an article coming out for Bright Side of the Sun. It may be today, could be tomorrow, I don't know, but I did write it today, going over the 2 trades that the Phoenix Suns did ultimately really put themselves in this situation in, and asked what was worse looking back on those trades. So if you want to look at that, kind of go over where this Suns team kind of got into this place, that's not where this discussion is really going to be. If you want to check that out, check that article. But today's art discussion is going to be kind of how they really got themselves stuck here in today and how they can really try to find their way to get out of this, or potentially might be stuck in it for the future as well. Because like I mentioned, this Phoenix Suns team just has not lived up to what they were supposed to be. They were eliminated from playoff contention after losing 8 straight. And with them being the most expensive team here, I want to look at this from Spot Track. With their loss to OKC last night, the Phoenix Suns, NBA's most expensive tax team at $214 million, have officially been eliminated from the postseason. It's the second straight season that a top tax team hasn't clinched a playoff berth, with the Warriors lost in play-in game in 2023-2024. We see the Warriors obviously have to try to work around that. We see from Shane Young, obviously with over $366 million in salaries and tax penalties combined, this is the most expensive team to ever miss the postseason, which is an absolute disgrace. And there's obviously going to be some talking about the offseason as well, which we'll get into a little bit. But Bobby Marks talked about this a little bit, how he outlines the potential of offseason priorities for Phoenix, in which Phoenix's obviously main goal here in all of this. If we want to look at Bobby Marks' Twitter, which is absolutely fantastic for these graphics alone, not for just what else Bobby, can produce for ESPN as being one of their top salary guys and really knowing how this team works overall as a whole. But if you look at this here, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Phoenix Suns offseason roster as a whole and how it will look to shape for this team, right? You see the starting five: Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Royce O'Neal, Kevin Durant. They are under contract. Ose Iguodala, Ryan Dunn, Grayson Allen, they are under contract. But just those 7 players at this very moment, if the season were to end and were to roll over, would be under contract for the Phoenix Suns team. And with those 7 guys being under roster, the Suns are still over the first apron and are in to that second apron, as they still have $218 million in salary right there. Now, obviously, they have 3 contracts: Nick Richards, Cody Martin, and Vasilij Micic, that they can waive to drop below that first apron. And by waiving Vasilij Micic and Cody Martin, they effectively drop below the first apron with just those 2 contracts. So they could still keep Nick Richards. And for Richards being a player that they added by only giving up Josh Okogie and not having to give up any future first capital, and for a player that seemingly looked like he could be a solid backup big or fringe starter for the Suns in some rotations and in some lineups, I do think that he could be a valuable add and keep for this Suns squad, especially on that low cheap price tag of $5 million, something that the Suns could, kind of afford to have on this roster. Cheap slash valuable guys who, might not be exceeding their role or worth an extension anytime soon, but at least are playing solidified, solid basketball on a cheap contract and can play an impactful role for this team. Now, obviously, there could still be trades with other guys outside the big 3 as well, and contracts like Royce O'Neal and Grayson Allen, as Royce O'Neal makes around, I believe, $9 or $10 million, Grayson Allen $16 million. The Suns could look to move one of those guys in the offseason, and I wouldn't be shocked either if they did look to move off of either Grayson Allen or Royce O'Neal in the offseason as well, to shed some salary, maybe even on draft night, to moving them to a team that has some extra salary to get a future first or a potential first round pick, in an additional first round pick in the draft, to help the Suns a little bit in their retool slash rebuild with this new roster. We could see also Cody Martin and Vasilij Micic brought back, but with Micic not really playing and having interest overseas, I don't see him coming back, and I do think Cody Martin could play an impactful role. But I think if the Suns want to bring him back, the smart thing to do would be waive him and bring him back on a cheaper deal, maybe even a veteran minimum contract. But as long as the Suns could drop below into that first apron, then things become a little bit easier. The thresholds for trades become a little bit easier, right, ladies and gentlemen? They can aggregate salaries in trades. They don't have to, trade salary exact match for exact match or taking back less. They can take back more in salary. So if we're looking for trades with Bradley Beal or even Kevin Durant, those two become a little easier for the Phoenix Suns and facilitating those trades with outside parties. And then you also look at the free agents that are on this Phoenix Suns team. Guys like Bol Bol, Mason Plumlee, Damian Lee, Tyus Jones, and Monte Morris. Key, obviously, free agents that were on this Suns team, but also on this Suns squad. You got guys like Colin Gillespie, who I failed to mention, and you can't really see on this list at the moment, but is absolutely fantastic for this Phoenix Suns team and absolutely ridiculous, and someone that should definitely be getting a contract when he is brought back with this Phoenix Suns team. But there are some question marks looking at those free agents. Tyus Jones on a veteran minimum, he's going to be looking to make more money, but did he look in his role with Phoenix to make more than a veteran minimum? I would think so, but I don't think it would be on Phoenix, and if so, it's not much more than that. Monte Morris and Mason Plumlee, the two veterans, really got their roles taken away from them throughout the season. Monte disappeared in December. Mason Plumlee disappeared once the rookies started to really get their leash kind of let go, and they were able to kind of develop through the end of March and into April here. But with those two guys, they could be brought back. I don't necessarily know if they're key guys that the Suns once again are looking to bring back, or they're even interested in coming back to Phoenix with the fact that they got replaced. Bull could be another interesting name, as well as he showed signs of growth and development through the Suns team in his small instances where he got to play. But once again, he got shafted and forgotten in this rotation. But the Suns could add him back to bring some depth. And then looking at those two ways, like I mentioned, Gillespie should be one the Suns definitely keep an eye on because he proved that he is worth more than a two-way and can be a guaranteed contract deal. Jalen Bridges and Ty Washington are both young players that proved that they played well in the Valley Suns inaugural season, and I do believe that they will also be brought back for this Phoenix Suns team as two-way guys to just play and kind of develop and grow. Ty Washington being a hometown kid, might as well just have him on those two-way deals. They are if they are eligible to be on the two-way deal, keep them on there and let them kind of grow and develop. And who knows, maybe one of them can pan out alongside like Colin Gillespie did this season, and the Suns can see some growth. But as we all know, there are going to be changes coming, right? This Phoenix Suns team is going to have to make some moves. Things are going to get rocky, not only with just the roster, but with the front office and the coaching staff as well, as both of those have not been great either. We obviously know the Phoenix Suns front office has made some drastic changes, some drastic moves over these last couple seasons since bringing in Matt Ishbia into this front office. We have seen players like Kevin Durant be brought in, and obviously trading away the Twins. And depending on how you feel about that trade, there's a lot of different sides to that. There's obviously the trade for Bradley Beal, giving up Chris Paul and Landry Shamet, two contracts that obviously were not at the value that the players were playing at, obviously, but both could provide some value for this team. And there were also other deals that they could have gone. They added draft capital to get Bradley Beal. They also went out there and they traded away Nurkic, or DeAndre and Tumani Kamara, who has been the anchor for the Portland Trail Blazers defense this season in his sophomore year, for Grayson Allen and for Yusuf Nurkic, in which Nurkic and Keon Johnson and Nazir Little, though both of those players not on the roster. Nurkic also not on the roster, and Grayson Allen in a subsidized role this year with bringing in his college teammate and getting moved to the bench, had worse shooting numbers after getting his extension in a role where he doesn't seemingly need to be on the team. Therefore, with all those combinations aside, a lot of people are looking at this front office saying they need a little bit of an overhaul. So do I. They did hit on the draft picks in Dunn and Oso Ighodaro, which I do like, but I would not want to attach any of those players in any of these trades to move off on any of these contracts, all due to the fact that we saw what Tumani Kamara was able to do last season just in this little bit of a resurgence. And I'm not saying that Ryan Dunn is Tumani Kamara 2.0. You know, they're not carbon copies for each other. They bring different skill sets to the game. In basketball, Tumani's a little bit more of a lengthier defender. His size is able to help him in that Portland defense, and where Ryan Dunny's more of a POA defender, where he's going to be more aggressive, going up on the guards, being a little bit more relentless, looking for those steals, whereas also Ryan Dunn, I believe, is a little bit better on the offensive side and can hit those open threes if he were to get that shot to really develop compared to Tumani Kamara. And I think that's something really looking intrinsic and valuable within these rookies here, so I wouldn't look to move off of them. But the front office, I does think need a little bit of a change up. James Jones hasn't done the best in these trades, and regardless if it's Matt Ishbia forcing his hand or it's James Jones making those deals, some sort of switch up or change needs to be happening to really let us know and signify who is the decision maker in this front office. And with the new front office change coming in, if they are to make some smart moves and really change some things around here, that could really be justified and the theories could be debunked. Also, looking at the coaching staff, we've seen that coaching carousel go on for the last 3 seasons. I do think it will continue on after this season. Coach Budenholzer post-game obviously has had nothing to say really on his length with this Suns team. It's not something him and Matt Ishbia had spoken about, and we saw that in the post-game presser with the Oklahoma City Thunder. following the loss. But as we do know, two very talented coaches, and Mike Malone and Taylor Jenkins, were both released by the Memphis Grizzlies and Denver Nuggets in the Western Conference. And even though both of those teams have shown some struggles, have shown, that they haven't been able to work intrinsically with their head coaching staff, they're in better situations than the Phoenix Suns, and the Suns still have yet to part ways with their head coach. So it only alludes to me that this will be another thing that will just happen as another domino effect with this Suns team going into this offseason, where once again they'll be looking for roster changes, looking for trades with Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant in the future with this team, but also looking at the future with this coaching staff and this front office. So let's look at the chat. Let's look at what people are saying. Went on my little rant, and then we'll dive in, and then we'll look at specific players and kind of go over what my thoughts are on these specific players. And if there's any specific player that you guys would like to kind of talk about first on this Phoenix Suns team, kind of just shout them out in the chat. I'll kind of go over that first. But like I said, we don't need Westbrook. I would agree. The Suns need to fire Mike. I would also agree. We thought it was a dream team, but it was an ass team now with the addition of KD. Well, I just think that it's just a unfortunate circumstance of roster construction. I think with Kevin and Devin, this team would be totally fine. Name is Phoenix Buns, not Suns. No, I know. Phoenix Buns, the no trade clause arena. No, I like that, King Nacho. I like that. I like that a lot. But yeah, I'm ranting. I'm obviously frustrated with this team, as you guys know. I know a lot of other people as well are very frustrated about this team and the circumstances that they have kind of, put us through and put us in this season here. As, like I mentioned, the expectations were high. My expectations were fifth seed in the Western Conference, right? And that's what, one higher seed than last year, but I thought fifth seed, at least second round of the playoffs. And then at that point, with this kind of team, you realize that the Bradley Beal fit isn't working, and then you look to move off Bradley Beal. And then Bradley Beal still has some trade value because he's still productive as a third scorer, and other teams are going, all right, he's still valuable in Phoenix. He's just not really fitting in. We're willing to make that move to get a veteran type of guy and give up some of our defenders so that we can help out Phoenix, and it would have been a little bit easier. Similar to like a Jimmy Butler trade, right? Like if Bradley Beal had not been injured and been playing really good last season, and the Suns had went on a run to maybe they made the second round last year, right? And then this year, Jimmy Butler's frustrated. They want Jimmy Butler. Maybe Miami is more interested in a Bradley Beal trade due to the fact that he's actually playing good. You know what I mean? Like Bradley Beal being injured and also not playing up to par and not playing to his standards is what has also hindered his trade value because now everyone else sees this player is not worth $50 million and the Suns are looking to get off of him and we do not want to acquire him. We're only going to acquire him if they give us all their draft capital. Then again, Phoenix has no draft capital. They can't acquire him. They can't send anything else. Yeah, I saw Brawadis is mad too. I saw he was mad. I just want Beal gone. Okay, so let's talk about Beal first because we're already kind of talking about him and we've kind of made it known, right? Like we're all kind of frustrated about Bradley Beal here, right? So let's talk about Bradley Beal, ladies and gentlemen. Let's bring him up on the stand. Obviously, not actually. He's not on a call or anything like that. That'd be kind of crazy. But let's bring up Bradley Beal, right? Let's discuss Mr. Beal. Okay? Here he is, Mr. Bradley Beal, ladies and gentlemen. The one that not a lot of Suns fans are fan favorites of at this moment, and for the right reasons. Like I said, I do believe, like I mentioned, that Bradley Beal will be gone and off this team. We did see a report from John Gambadoro yesterday on his podcast that the Suns will work him off this roster, regardless if it's via trade, regardless if it's via buyout. And I do think that's smart. Now, for the Suns to do a buyout, it's going to be a little bit hard because there's two ways they can do the buyout. They can do the wave and stretch, or they can do the buyout outright. Now, if they do the wave and stretch, it's a little difficult just due to the fact that Bradley Beal, that they waived and stretched Nazir Little and EJ Liddell last season, still owing them $3 million. This would mean that obviously the Phoenix Suns, there's like some certain amount of money they can take with a percentage, all that stuff. The Suns cannot basically stretch and waive Beal the amount that they would like to this season, so he has to take a little bit of a pay cut to do so. Now, that might not be a problem for Bradley Beal if he wants to get off this team and still feels he can get that missing, $10 to $15 million out of his contract in free agency, but that could be something that hinders things back. The Suns could also, outright just buy him out, give him the $110 million and just be done with it. And that would be drastic and crazy because we haven't seen that happen to any superstar, specifically one on a no trade clause and one in a dire situation like this. And it usually happens on the final year of a deal, not with 2 years left. But an owner like Matt Ishbia who wants to win, who said he wants to win in articles in ESPN, could be that guy to be like, hey, if we can't find a trade for Bradley Beal, this is what we have to do. This is what we have to do. I'm willing to bite the bullet to just get it off and get it over with. And that could be the transition we see with this Phoenix Suns team, and one that I do think will transpire. I do not expect Bradley Beal to be on this roster, and I do expect him to be on another team, helping out that other team and being solid on that other team at a price that is more valuable to what he can bring out on the NBA floor. And that's no knock on him. I just, like I said, don't think he's worth $50 million. He's not worth a no trade clause. If either of those were removed from his contract, if he was making less money, or if he wasn't on a no trade clause, he would have been traded at the trade deadline. Both of those things just become double negative and greatly affect this Phoenix Suns team. But like I said, Beal struggled for this Phoenix Suns team even late when emerging with this squad as a secondary scorer without Kevin Durant. He had some glimpses on the bench unit where he was pretty decent, but for most of the season he was either injured or wasn't perfect for this Suns team, and that's just struggling again, once again, when you're a team who needs these stars to really step up and really depend and play. Like I mentioned with Bradley Beal, I do think there's some possibilities of a trade. I know some people have talked about Chicago. I know some people have talked about potentially Atlanta, Washington. I think that so those are some of the teams towards in the Eastern Conference that might want to still stay relevant, and by adding a player like Bradley Beal still could stay afloat. If Bradley Beal feels confident and comfortable in going there, then I could see them orchestrating a trade to kind of getting some role players, even if they're not the flashiest, but 2 or 3 guys to really come into this team to help out, to really be dependable, could work out with this Phoenix Suns team. Or I could see Bradley Beal still being like, no, I only want to go Denver, Los Angeles, Milwaukee, whatever top tier contenders are next season. You know what I mean? I'm not saying those top 3 teams, but just a contender. I don't want to go to any of those middle of the pack teams, and that ultimately results in the buyout just due to the fact that none of those teams are willing to trade for the $50 million contract of Bradley Beal and still want the player, but still want him at around $15 to $20 million. So that's what we're talking about, Bradley Beal. I would give him a 0% chance that he is on this team. The next player that we're going to be talking about, though, is Kevin Durant. This player right here is another player that has some uncertainty with this Phoenix Suns roster kind of coming into next season here. As we have seen, Durant has been someone that has worked well with this Suns team, but the Suns team might want to move off of him more than earlier than he wanted to leave. They looked to trade him when they failed to get Jimmy Butler in a deal, almost flipped him for Jimmy Butler, then nixed the trade because he didn't want to do it. And that drama has kind of pushed into this season with Durant sustaining this ankle injury, not being eligible for All NBA by missing the 65 game threshold, and by the Suns being eliminated from the playoffs. I don't expect him to play in these last 2 games. I expect him to be done. I expect him to sit out the rest of the season, and I do expect Kevin Durant and this Phoenix Suns team to work on the future of the Suns without Kevin Durant, unfortunately. The reports, the rumors, all since the trade deadline, is that Durant is going to be traded, and I'd love for Durant to stay on this team and work with Devin Booker, because as you guys all know, I've been one of the people that says that it can work, and that they can work with this team, and if you move off Bradley Beal, you can still succeed with this Suns roster. But clearly, I think the time has turned with Kevin Durant, with him getting older in age. Not that that affects anything, but with the Suns and ownership viewing that Devin Booker's 28, they could still get some win now candidates around Devin Booker to put him in a win now competitive mode, not just next season or the year after, but in 1 to 2 seasons where he's still an effective star in this league. I do believe that's kind of the direction the Suns will look forward, and I do believe moving off Kevin Durant will require that for the Phoenix Suns. Now, once again, every team's going to be interested in Kevin Durant. The rumors are that they're going to get less and less in this trade package for Kevin Durant. I ultimately do think that they're not going to get some highway robbery people talking about Amen Thompson from the Rockets. They're not getting none of that. If they're getting anything from the Rockets, it's Cam Whitmore, it's Tari Eason, and it's some filler contracts. That's what it is, and that's how it's going to be. Dylan Brooks, maybe that's what you get for Kevin Durant. I think that could be a trade that could possibly be done. Memphis is maybe a team that's interested. Minnesota's a team that's interested. Maybe even San Antonio, Miami. I do think that there will be more teams once again calling the Suns' phone once the Kevin Durant market becomes more clear or more available, that the Suns are kind of heading in that direction regardless of what they do with Bradley Beal. But they could work an extension out with Kevin Durant. They could bring him back to this team, and they could find a resolution with him and Devin Booker, and that wouldn't shock me in the slightest. But I do feel that it is a low percentage. I'd give it a 20% chance in my heart right now that that would happen, even though that's 100% what I want to happen with this Phoenix Suns team. I have to be realistic, even though I want to be optimistic. So honestly, I do believe that the Phoenix Suns will not have Kevin Durant on this roster next season, and will be working with Devin Booker and finding him another running mate, as Matt Ishbia has said that he wants his team to still be competitive. And that kind of leads into the next person that obviously that we can kind of discuss here, and that is Devin Booker here. And Booker, I think, has been a really, really tough subject for Phoenix Suns fans to discuss this season. I don't understand why it has been, but a lot of people want to nitpick on Devin Booker and really harp on the fact that he hasn't been this all offensive player that he was a couple seasons ago and all this stuff. But he still is a top tier shooting guard in the league, and he's put that on clear display, specifically with Kevin Durant out over this last stretch where he's been really, really effective for this Suns team. Every player goes through shooting slumps and ruts throughout the season, and Devin Booker has had maybe a little bit more of those than he has in the past. But just because he's had that doesn't mean that he's a bad player. He's aging, he's getting worse. All of these narratives, those need to stop. He's still a top tier player on this Phoenix Suns team. He's a top tier player in the NBA. And I do believe that he can once again lead this Phoenix Suns team with some right help in the right places to some great lands in this Western Conference here within the reach of this Phoenix Suns team. And he's also had a fantastic playmaking season this year. I want to give a huge shout out to the people that have kind of really been focusing on that, because he has been absolutely fantastic in distributing and really working alongside as a playmaker and really figuring that out. And I was wrong. I said they need another point guard. I said that they needed Tyus Jones. Completely wrong on that, and I'll fully admit it. If you've been a fan for the longest that, you would obviously know that was something I was preaching back in the offseason, and there'll probably be some more things I'm wrong on in the offseason. But like I said, Point Book is here to stay, and I do think that if you have Point Booker alongside another secondary ball handler, one that is primarily a defensive one, the one that can help Beal with the POA defense alongside Ryan Dunn, man, oh man, is that going to make Devin Booker not only look better as a playmaker, because he's going to have these guys like Ryan Dunn and the other guard cutting from the wing, going to the basket and finding them in some nice plays, but it's also going to free him up more offensively to have more of a leeway to take control and to be that scorer that we all know that he can be on this Phoenix Suns team. So I'm really excited to see what they do with Devin Booker in this retool rebuild. I'm not believing that Devin Booker would be traded. The only way I see him being traded is if he asks out, and at this point, all signs are pointing that he's not going to ask out, and he doesn't want to ask out. So I don't see that being a problem with this Phoenix Suns team and or Devin Booker, and not something to worry about this offseason. Maybe in 2 to 3 potential seasons down the road, that's a discussion to have with this Suns team and how they've been able to retool around Devin Booker. But at this point, the Suns' leading franchise point scorer, I would not see being moved at this point, and I would see being on this team. And if the Suns do go that route and moving all three superstars, or if you want to say superstars with Bradley Beal at this point, off this roster, all three $50 million players off this roster, and went into a full reset, full rebuild, I would be completely shocked. Not that I would be, I'd be very upset, but ultimately be very, very shocked as well. And then kind of diving into some other players on this Suns roster, if we want to give me a second here. Oop, I disappeared from you real quick. But if you give me 1 second, I'm going to pull up the Suns salary cap for all of us so we can dive in and we can look at that real quick before we head out. Because that's really the, I guess, last kind of players that we can really look at, right? If we look at the Suns salary cap and kind of go over it, those are the last boys. So like I mentioned, we went over Durant, who's on a 1-year deal, Beal, who has 2 more years after the season, and Booker, who has 3 more years after this season. Like I said, I wouldn't see Booker getting frustrated until this point here in 26, 27. So I think we get ourselves at least a 2 little year leeway with him. Now, gets into the interesting and fun parts about this Phoenix Suns team, and that's where we get into here, right? Obviously, Martin and Micic, we're hoping, are waived on the off of this team so we can drop below the first apron. Wouldn't mind welcoming Martin back on a cheaper deal, but not at 8 million, right around 4, maybe even 5 wouldn't be bad. Richards, I do expect to be brought back as well. Um, Ryan Dunn, the rookie, I do not expect him being thrown in any trade. Maybe in a trade with Bradley Beal, but once again, I'm not advising for the Suns to do that because look what happened with Tumani Kamara. Don't do that. Damian Lee won't be here. Plumlee won't be here. Monte won't be here. Tyus won't be here. Bowl won't be here. Oso will be here. Oso is under contract, so this is a little bit of a mess up here from Basketball Reference. Oso is under contract for next season, so they will have Oso Kadaro. Once again, he could potentially be thrown in a trade for Bradley Beal. I'd rather Oso over Dunn just because Dunn provides the defense that the team does need, but that doesn't mean that I want either of them to be involved, as I think both of them can provide valuable pieces for the Suns squad, but I'd be more comfortable throwing in Oso Ighodaro than I would be Ryan Dunn. And then we get into the fun part here, right, ladies and gentlemen? These two boys, Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal. So you got, if you're a fan of Suns Planet Pod, you got Debo right here, and you got the big meal. All right. So with Debo, he's making 15 million, 16 next year, and that's a very tradable contract in the NBA, right? You look at Yusuf Nurkic, you look at his contract around $18 million. That was a little bit higher than tradable, but in this market, between a 12 to 16 is going to be pretty tradable, specifically if you're in the first apron as well. If you're in the second apron, it obviously makes a lot of things harder because you can only take back less than money. But if you're in the first apron, you can take back even more money, right? So with the Suns, with a player like Grayson Allen, who once again is a solid 3-point shooter in the NBA, right? Had a little bit of worse shooting splits this year, but obviously was coming off the bench and in a little bit more of an inconsistent role, dealt with some more injuries than he did last season. I think he could provide some solid shooting on the wing for some very valuable teams, specifically in the Eastern Conference. I think you look at teams like the Detroit Pistons and the Orlando Magic, two teams that are, on the fringes right now in their playoff contention at 6-7. But the Magic obviously had a really, really beat up season. I think they would have been really solid in the Eastern Conference if they were fully healthy, but they lacked shooting. They lacked scoring. They lacked that 3-point outside shot. So do the Indiana Pacers, as they ranked 27th in 3-point shooting right around the trade deadline. And even the Detroit Pistons. You've seen with the ascension of guys like Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., Tobias Harris, the Cade Cunningham's development has grown with those shooters on the wings. So maybe a player like Grayson Allen could be once again a player that intrigues one of those teams, right? The Magic still need that shooting. They're still vying for it and have some tradable contracts that the Suns could look to get back for a player like Grayson Allen. And I do believe they were interested in Grayson Allen at the trade deadline. The Pacers are another team that could be interested in Grayson Allen, as Obi Toppin was a name that I threw out there that I thought would be a very valuable piece for the Suns as an athletic wing, a low dunk, a small ball 5, someone that can sit on the dunker spot down low and be a solid post scorer. And he also brings the ability to shoot pretty solid from the 3-point range, something that Budenholzer really likes in his wings, and is allowing as a shot blocker in rim protector. That is someone that I thought would have been a perfect add for the Suns. They didn't go through it. And then you look at Detroit. They have players, obviously Malik Beasley have done really great this year. He's on a 1-year contract. So could he look to get more money, or could he look to stay in Detroit? If he looks to get more money, maybe they need a replacement in Grayson Allen. Tim Hardaway Jr. as well. Guess what? He's a free agent. He's not coming back. But they could value that shooting once again. Could have the cap space to take in that $18 million. Those are teams that I think a player like Grayson Allen could affect and naturally help out realistically. And also, the Suns could also find some value from those teams. You look at a team in Detroit. I know not a lot of Suns fans are fans of him, but Isaiah Stewart, Beef Stew, could bring some great defensive prowess, can bring some great intensity for this Suns team. Yes, he's a little bit of a hothead, small ball 5, but he can shoot the ball a little bit. He could be a new piece, a new energy, a new type of role that the Phoenix Suns, guess what, don't have. And you know what that does? That adds excitement. That adds intrigue. That adds fun to this roster. You look at a player in Obi Toppin, once again, a player that this Suns team does not have. You look at a player in Jonathan Isaac from the Orlando Magic, who, once again, has dealt with injuries, but has been one of the top tier defenders in the NBA and an underrated defender when healthy. Adding a player like him to, once again, a team that is terrible on defense would add something new and exciting. Players like that are players that this Suns team needs to go out and get, and they have the contracts to move off of to go and get it. Grayson Allen would be an ideal trade candidate if I'm the Phoenix Suns GM to look at. Not personally, not, it's not on a personal way, but on a business way. And we all know that the NBA is a business. This team needs to get better. This team needs to find new roles, new holes to fill in these type of position needs that they have. And Grayson Allen is one of those more valuable contracts, specifically with him having 3 or 2 more seasons after this year as well. 3 years locked up, that has some great security for a solid three-point shooter that can be a six-man for you at his best, but realistically could also be a quality level starter for you as well. And Grayson Allen, he played that last year, around 30 years old as well going into next season. He is not too old to be that type of player in the NBA, and I do think a lot of teams would be interested in Grayson Allen. You could potentially even get a draft pick attached with one of these players, even if it is a late first or potentially some future seconds, which could help you make even more trades or just help bolster you up to get some draft capital that you were missing from the trades from the past. You also look at Royce O'Neal, the big meal, another 3-and-D wing type player the Suns brought in, right? And I've been a huge supporter of Royce O'Neal, right? Since the beginning. He was a guy that I looked at last season before I was making Suns content and said, Royce O'Neal would be perfect for the Suns. Played with Kevin Durant in Brooklyn. Brooklyn looks like they're needing to sell. They have these extra role players. Go and get Royce O'Neal. And they went out and they did that. And Royce, last season, didn't look that great when he came to Phoenix. Looked better in the playoffs, but didn't look that great when he arrived to Phoenix. And this year, had a very streaky season. There are some points where Royce O'Neal was lights out. 7 for 9 from three-point range, absolute dog, playing some great defense, being everywhere he needed to be. But then there were some nights where obviously Royce O'Neal had a streaky shooting, similar to Grayson Allen. And there were some nights where he looked a little lost on defense, was getting blown by a little bit too bit. Maybe it looked like the age at 31 had gotten to him. And I think that for Royce O'Neal, for him to be in his best role, it is to come off the bench, and we saw that for a majority of this season, and I think he could still bring some value, and I would rather keep him personally over Grayson Allen because his defensive prowess, even if it isn't as much as we have seen in the past from Royce O'Neal, is still solid enough to keep him in the NBA and keep him in this rotation. I do feel that the Suns could also look to move off of a guy like Royce O'Neal to maybe potentially get a little bit younger. You also look at his contract at around $10 million. It is a tradable one as well. And the Suns, if they do drop below into that first apron, get some more luxuries as well. They get the mid-level exception, which allows them to sign a $12 million up to $12 million player, and it allows them to aggregate salaries and trades. So if they were able to do that, the Suns could combine a Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal and get $27 million and use that to get 3 or 4 players or 2 or 3 players that suit them in a better role, or potentially just bring something different that the Suns are missing. Like I mentioned, $27 million across the league get you someone worth $11 million, $10 million, and then $5 million. And that those 3 players right then and there, if they could be key pieces for the Suns, could help out. Now, I don't expect them to aggregate them together. I expect them to do them in separate moves. That's something also to keep an eye out with this Suns squad. With this team dropping below the first apron, it gives them so much more, and they could sign a player that could play a role like Royce O'Neal into the mid-level exception, and then move off a player like Royce O'Neal to get another role player that could suit them in a better need. Like I mentioned, lots of changes, lots of stuff's going to be happening. I don't think anybody is safe on this roster at this moment besides Devin Booker, and that's only up to Devin Booker if he wants to stay on this roster. I do think that if Devin Booker were to request a trade or would want to get moved off of this Phoenix Suns team, then he would have then the Suns would do the honor and do it. But I don't think we're at that point at this time with the Phoenix Suns and with Devin Booker to really have those discussions. But like I mentioned, Beal, Durant would not be shocked if either of them were moved, would not be shocked either if players in Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, Cody Martin were not brought back. Nick Richards potentially was even waived, or even if one of those rookies and Ryan Dunn or Osagodara was thrown in for a deal to get off Bradley Beal's contract. The last player I do want to talk about, which I did fail to talk about, so I will bring this back up here, is the two-way player on this Suns team, and that is Colin Gillespie. This man right here is an absolute dog, has outplayed his contract, and clearly has proven at the age of 25, going on 26, that he can make an impact role for this Suns team. Now, for this Suns squad, I do think that he could be a backup point guard, and I think that his ability to drive to the basket and be a little bit of a finisher, a little bit of Nash-esque, excuse me, that people have seen. But not only that, his ability to be a solid player off ball, his shooting ability, and his playmaking ability and his ability to work in the pick and roll is pretty solid as well. But not only just that, his defensive limitations have set him back with his size, but he has that hustle and that heart to keep him on the floor and to fight through everything that he can to really show to the Phoenix Suns fans that he's working to get to this contract role. And I do think he's well and deserving of that. I don't think the Phoenix Suns should let a player like Gillespie, who's proven his worth on this Phoenix Suns team, just let up and go for waste to another squad to really show his impacts on there. I think the Suns should reward him for his great play by bringing him up on this roster, and they should do that by the end of the season. Now, there's no guarantee that that will happen now that the Suns have missed the play-in, and there's no, need to bring a player like Colin Gillespie on this team, as they could still do it in the offseason. But sure is so. I would love for them to do it right now and get it over with. But you guys have been absolutely fantastic. I'm going to look at the chat, kind of go over what you guys got to say, and then we'll head out on the stream. But that was my rant. That was my stuff talking about the Suns. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. I hope you guys had fun here. And if you guys are new, you want to stay up to date on everything, we have these streams every week, Thursdays, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. We're going to have some special guests coming on as well. Now that the season is going to be going into the offseason for the Phoenix Suns, even with the play-in and the playoffs still going on across the league, I definitely will be reaching out to more people in the Suns fan base and potentially even some reporters or people that work for the Phoenix Suns that have, a little bit more free time or availability to be able to come on the show. So that's something definitely that I'm going to be trying to kind of get on here. So if you want to stay up to date, even see some more faces from the Suns fan base on here, definitely hit that subscribe button. And we'll have being videos and all that jazz coming out on every single news topic getting closer to the season. But Jeffrey's in here. What's up, Jeffrey? I've seen you commenting in a bunch, but I haven't gotten to your comments. Colin is a stud. I would definitely agree. Do we have 2031 first? So yes and no. Um, 2032 pick technically isn't given because it's a 7-year gap, so we get it at the end of 2025, or 6-year gap, excuse me. So we won't get it until the end of this off season, but I do believe we have it. Yes, we need more first round picks. I would agree, but I don't know if the Suns are going to be going that route, as what Matt Ishbia has said. Martin played well with the small sample size that we had. I agree, Jeffrey. I think that he definitely played well. I'd like to see him brought back to this Suns team, but I don't necessarily know at the $8 million is he worth it. Bye bye GA and Royce, says Suns Fever. I would agree. I think that that's got to be done. I think we need some different role players for this squad. I'd love to re-sign Bull if he played, if he was given guaranteed that he was going to play. Can I do the stream until 7? I'm going as long as I can. I'm going to be signing off here in a little bit, but I'm going through some of the comments, so we'll see if I get exactly to 7. Off with Mike's head. He doesn't know how to formulate really lineups and rotation. And just, yeah, I agree with that exactly, Jeffrey. We are gone with Mike. We are gone with this front office. CJ, we're getting a lot of questions about CJ and Curtis, so I will clear the air about that right now. So Curtis and CJ no longer work for Digest Media. Both of them have parted ways with Digest Media and Suns Digest. Huge, still have connections and huge fans of what they both have been able to do for Suns Digest. So I want to give them, their flowers for what they brought to Suns Digest and here and stuff like that. But just because Curtis and CJ have left doesn't mean that there won't be new faces as well coming through on Suns Digest. And I do believe that we are in the process as well. So there will be some new faces. And like I said, we'll be having guests. We'll be having a lot of fun. But shout out to Curtis. Shout out to CJ. They are OGs and definitely helping in building blocks of this channel alongside Digest Media and the company. So I definitely appreciate it. Bud and D-Book got to stay. You want to keep Bud. Keeping Bud, okay. I agree with D-Book, but I'm not the greatest with keeping Bud. He had some questioning calls with Booker throughout the season, and I'm not the biggest fan of that, I would say. I don't know about you, but that's just me personally. I'm not the biggest fan of Bud and really staying around because him and Devin Booker didn't really get along and his rotations were not great and he just seemingly looks lost in the post game asking and questions and everything about this team. I don't think he's handled it the best. Not to say that I would handle it any better because this has been an absolute disaster, but there has been a lot about this Phoenix Suns team that has simply gone wrong, unfortunately. And I want to thank you guys for coming onto the stream, for hanging out. We had an absolute fantastic time breaking down this Suns team and going over everything. Like I said, streams are weekly, 6 p.m., so we will be live once again next week at the same time, 3 p.m. Pacific, but 6 p.m. Eastern for all you guys tuning around the U.S. to break down this Phoenix Suns team once again. We're going to have more news, more topics, more stuff, talking, breaking down, going over the stuff. Probably be more player centric or topic based centric for the next couple of streams, kind of going over what's really been happening and stuff like that in those news realms. But definitely stay updated, definitely keep up to date because over on Suns Digest, we definitely will have that coming through. And if you want to hear other work by me as well, not only from Suns Digest, if you like Suns content and you like the videos, right? I know a lot of you like the videos, but some of you might want to get a little bit more information, might want to read a little bit more about the Suns, right? You can check me out over on Last Word on Sports and over at Bright Side of the Sun, where I have some articles come out over there. You can also check me out over on Suns Planet Pod, where we go live, me, Kevin, and Jake, on Saturdays at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, for all you guys in Phoenix, where we break down the Suns and have special guests over there. It's super fun time. So if you enjoy me, you enjoy the Suns content, that's where you can find me. But I appreciate all you for coming out and supporting, hitting those videos, hitting the live stream, really being involved in this Suns community, even though it hasn't been a great season, hasn't been the season that we all have hoped for this Phoenix Suns team. You guys have definitely shown the support, and that's definitely thankful throughout the entire year on my part. So once again, thank you everyone that came through the stream that was chatting up in here, from my guys like King Nacho, Trajan. We had Phoenix Suns #1 fan in here. We had, let me look through the list. Jeffrey Catalino. I appreciate you all for being in here in the chat. If you weren't in the chat, but you were tuning in, and you are still tuning in, thank you so much for coming in and watching the stream. It's really appreciative. I'll catch you guys in the next stream, though, and have a great rest of your night. Go Phoenix, and this next game is going to be interesting with them having no playoff implications. So hopefully the young guys can get some run. Have a great rest of your night. Peace out, everyone.